Welcome to part 4 of the drag and drop tutorial for Angular 5. In this part, I will demonstrate how you can have a special helper element when dragging an element. I call it the draggable helper. This will make it possible to keep the original element on its default position and style both elements differently. It also provides a solution for overflow hidden and set index issues. To prevent dirty hacks and to position the helper in an elegant way, I will make use of the Angular CDK, the component dev kit. Now let's get started. I am running the existing project of part 3. Let's add a new section for part 4 to test what we are going to build. Let's say we have a box which is draggable. Now when I drag this box, it detects the drag events like we built it in part 1. To make it movable, we can use the movable directive from part 2. As you can see, the element itself is moved and the original place stays empty. Besides that, when I add a wrapping element with an overflow hidden, and I move the element, you see that it does not escape from the overflow. This is exactly what we want to solve with a separate helper element. Let's think of how the solution should look like. For the maximum flexibility, you want to define the helper element explicitly, like this. However, instead of rendering it, we can wrap an ng template element around it. Now we can add a template reference variable on the template, and then we can pass that reference as input binding to our draggable directive. So let's first create the input binding. It is a helper and it is just a template we refer to. So this is a template ref. Now when we start dragging, we want to render the helper template. And to do this the Angular way, we need a view container ref. So let's get one injected. You can see the view container ref as the location of the current directive in the view, like an empty slot in which you can render views. Now we need to call the create embedded view method and pass the helper template ref. Now as you can see, the helper is rendered next to the box. When we stop dragging, it is not yet removed. We can simply achieve that by clearing the view container ref. Now let's first improve what we have before we continue. Instead of passing a template ref, we can be more specific and ask for a specific directive. This is considered a good practice. We can achieve that by introducing a draggable helper directive. Now let's make the template reference variable refer to the directive. And let's create the draggable helper directive. Now, I use the Angular CLI to generate it. Now the default selector already matches our template use. and to use it outside of the draggable module, we need to export it. Now to make our template reference variable working, we need to export the directive like this. Now we can adjust the input binding of the draggable directive to accept the draggable helper directive instead. Now to get the actual template ref, we can now have it injected in our draggable helper directive and expose it as a public property. And we are back on track. What has been improved is that we are now more specific, but the solution is even more verbose than first. Let's work on that. A huge improvement can be to use the helper as content child instead of passing it as an input binding. To do this, we move the helper template inside the draggable box. We can now remove both the input binding and the reference variable. Inside the draggable directive, instead of having the helper as input, we can make it a content child. The content child decorator requires a selector, so let's query for any draggable helper directive. As you can see, things still work and everything is cleaner. The only requirement now is that every draggable has the helper as content child, but that's okay for me. Now we can improve this even more by using a different syntax. This syntax here is used by Angular structural directives and is just a shorter syntax for directives on templates. This is just syntactic sugar and won't make any real difference, except that it looks even cleaner. Since we now have a draggable helper directive, we can even move some logic to where it belongs. Creating and removing the helper can be done by the draggable helper directive itself. To do this, I create two methods, onDragStart and onDragEnd. Now I can just call the onDragStart method and move the logic over there. And let's do the same for removing the helper, which is done in the DragEnd. Now to make this work again, we have to get the view container ref injected. And we can just refer to our own template ref, which may now be private. As you can see, the draggable directive itself stays very clean in this way. When dragging, you see that the helper element is rendered inside of the box, and that is okay for now. And we can even now remove the constructor. You might think this is okay now, but I want to go further. In the current situation, the draggable directive needs to know about the helper. I would like to invert this dependency. So let's remove the current code first. And inside of our draggable helper directive, we can actually have the draggable directive injected because it is an ancestor. Now that we have the draggable, we can add an ng on init lifecycle hook, and we can now just subscribe to the drag start and drag end event emitters and call our existing methods. Let's add an interface for the lifecycle hook. And as you can see, things work perfectly. Now, of course, when we move the helper outside of the draggable box, we will get an error. But that is okay for now. Also, now that we have inverted the dependency, we can even have multiple helpers if that's what we want. That's cool, but let's stay with a single one for now. So let's continue with the positioning. And for that, we need to do things on the drag move as well. So let's add the method. We can also make our methods private, as we only use them in this class. Now, to get to the actual positioning, I first want to render the helper element in an overlay. And this is where the Angular CDK, the component dev kit, comes in. So let's first install the package with yarn. Now that we have imported the Angular CDK, we have to import some basic global styling first. And this is done by simply importing the overlay SAS file and use the mixin, and we are done. Now, in the CDK, an overlay is empty by default. So we can create it in our ng on init lifecycle hook. But first we need to import the overlay module. Now, to create a CDK overlay, we need to have the overlay service injected. And now I can create an overlay with the create method. Now, as you can see in the inspector, the overlay was successfully added. And we must not forget to clean it up as well. So let's do that in the ng on destroy lifecycle hook. And to do that, we should capture the overlay ref in a variable. And now we can simply call this pose on it. So as I just said, CDK overlay is empty by default. So in the drag start method, we can attach a so-called portal to it. The attach method requires either a component portal or a template portal. And as we are using a template ref, we can just create a new template portal. And it requires a template ref and a view container ref. And that's exactly what we already have. So let's see what this does. And as you can see, the helper was actually rendered in the overlay in the top left of my viewport. Now when I drag again, you will see an error, and that is because we need to properly detach the helper in the drag end. And things now work fine, as you can see. So let's customize the positioning. When I look on the overlay ref, I see that there are no positioning methods. The CDK provides this functionality using a positioning strategy. When creating the overlay ref, I see that there is an additional positioning strategy. The CDK already provides some strategies, and we will use the global positioning strategy. And it only requires a reference to the document, so let's use the global one for now. Now in order to update the position, we should capture the strategy in a variable. And so let's create a position strategy variable. And now we can modify the position, for example, by setting the left property and the top property. Now to update it, we should call the apply method. Now as you can see, the helper has a different position. As we now know how it works, we can make it dynamic. And for that we need to have the pointer events for the drag moves. And we already can get them from the event emitters we built in part 1. So let's use the client X and client Y properties to update the position. Now this looks a lot better, but I want to adjust the position a bit to match the position relative to the original box. We just have to determine this relative position in the drag start. So let's create a start position object. Now to calculate the relative starting position, we need to have the pointer event as well. So let's get it in the method. Let's get the client X and client Y properties. Now, as this should be a relative position, we should subtract the offsets of the original box. However, the draggable directive does not expose its element. So to fix this, we can go to the draggable directive and have the element ref injected. And expose it as a public property. Let's clean things up. Now in our draggable helper, we can get the offset by obtaining a bounding client rect from the native element of the draggable. Now we can make the start position relative by subtracting the left and top offsets. So let's make the start position a class variable. And now we can simply correct the positioning with the relative starting positioning. As you can now see, the positioning is pixel perfect. Finally, there is one issue that I want to solve. As you can see, before moving my pointer, the helper is still in the top left corner. Of course, we can solve this by positioning the helper in the drag start as well, but instead I move the attaching part to the drag move, and to only attach the first move, I can simply check if there is something attached, and if not, we can attach the helper template to the overlay. Now let's finally add the hidden overflow container again to prove that this solution solves that issue. And as you can see, it still works thanks to the overlay. I hope you guys like this video. Please like this video and give your feedback in the comment section below. Stay tuned for part 5, and for now, thank you for watching.